In the heart of the Nevada desert, one U.S. Air Force officer claimed he saw something that defied every law of nature we know. Not UFOs in the sky, but beings, human-like, over 7 feet tall, skin as white as paper, and eyes that didn't just look at you, but through you. Charles Hall wasn't some conspiracy theorist. He was a government weather observer stationed near Area 51 in the 1960s, and what he witnessed there would stay hidden for decades, until now. These weren't little green men from cartoons. They were intelligent, quiet, cautious, and according to Hall, they were working with the U.S. military. For what? Technology, resources, a deal made in silence. Some believe these tall whites helped spark breakthroughs in fiber optics, stealth aircraft, even microchips. Others think it's all Cold War paranoia. But if what Hall says is true, these beings never left. This isn't just a story about aliens. It's about contact, secrets, and the uncomfortable possibility that we're not alone, and never were. Stay with us, because what comes next may change how you look at the world around you. They weren't supposed to be real, not according to science, not according to logic, but in the dusty stretches of the Nevada desert, one man saw what no textbook could explain. Charles James Hall, an ordinary U.S. Air Force weather observer, was stationed at Nellis Air Force Base in the 1960s. What he witnessed there would redefine the boundaries between the natural and the supernatural. At first, it was all routine. Hall completed his tests, reported for duty, and was welcomed like any rookie, with banter and beer at the officers' club. That's when he first heard the name Range 4 Harry, a joke perhaps, a ghost story shared among bored soldiers. But the nervous glances exchanged when the name was spoken suggested something deeper, something no one wanted to say out loud. The next clue came from the base's cook. Hall made a lighthearted comment joking about Range 4 Harry, but her face went cold, dead silent. Hall brushed it off. A harmless prank, right? He couldn't have been more wrong. Soon after, Hall was assigned to a new station, deep in Indian Springs. As he arrived to take over from the previous range observer, he noticed something odd. The man was terrified. As they drove through the ranges, the once talkative soldier grew quiet, then rigid, then visibly shaken. By the time they neared Range 4, the man refused to go any further. His hands trembled, his voice broke. He offered no explanation, just fear. Hall, still half convinced this was all hazing or paranoia, laughed and asked, "What is this? Range 4 Harry again?" But the joke didn't land. The fear deepened. That was all the training Hall would get. He was now alone, with nothing but coordinates and whispers. That night, the desert was quiet, but Hall wasn't. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, and at exactly 9 p.m., his doubts would transform into horror. While stepping outside to relieve himself, Hall saw what appeared to be a pale white woman in the first cubicle. She wasn't human. She held a squarish device, something like a weapon. He froze, then ran. He convinced himself it was a dream. Maybe he was sleepwalking. Maybe stress had finally broken his mind, but it wasn't over. The next day, he encountered what he thought was a lost little girl hiding behind a sagebrush. He approached her gently, offering water. But this was no child, and as he turned to walk back, a flash of light tore across the desert floor, a being shaped like a man, moving faster than anything he'd ever seen. He had just met Range 4 Harry. So what exactly did Charles Hall see? Who or what were these beings that haunted the deserts of Nevada? According to Hall, they were not your average little green men. These beings stood tall, very tall, up to 8 feet in height, with chalk-white skin that reflected moonlight like polished marble. He described their hair as platinum white, cropped short. Their eyes, large and unblinking, gave off an unnatural sense of awareness, as if they weren't just looking at you, but through you. Hall noted their clothing resembled shiny suits, almost metallic in texture. But more than just fashion, he suspected these garments served a purpose. They seemed to allow levitation, light movements that defied gravity. To some, it sounded like hallucination. To others, it echoed the accounts of another alien archetype, the Nordic aliens. The tall whites, according to many UFO researchers, share physical traits with this category, being said to originate from the Pleiades, with pale skin, human-like symmetry, and an advanced sense of purpose. But physical traits are only half the mystery. What truly stood out was their behavior. Charles Hall reported that these beings held themselves with a strange blend of superiority and calm. They were not hostile, but they were not warm either. In one instance, he encountered what he called the teacher, a female-like entity who seemed to be some kind of liaison. She wasn't just observing him, she was studying him, interacting, guiding, even expressing something like trust, yet they never spoke, not a single word. Hall claimed their communication was entirely telepathic. He would hear them in his head, clear thoughts, images, intentions, without a single sound. To him, this wasn't magic. It was advanced technology, perhaps an evolved neurological interface, something our species couldn't begin to replicate. But it wasn't all wonder and curiosity. Hall also noticed they were cautious, deeply cautious. They feared humans. Despite their intelligence and strange powers, they didn't trust us easily. Every movement, every interaction seemed calculated, like two species tiptoeing around an invisible line, trying not to trigger something ancient and volatile. He even claimed their fear was mutual. As much as he was afraid of them, they were just as afraid of him. What kind of contact begins like this? What species builds secret trust with a single soldier on a forgotten desert post? And more importantly, why were they here at all? As the sightings continued, one chilling theory began to rise. They weren't just here for observation. They were here for a deal. Up next, what does the US government know? And what might they be hiding? Could a secret this big really stay hidden for decades? Could an alien race work with humans behind the curtain of global power? According to Charles Hall, yes. And he wasn't the only one saying so. Long before Hall ever saw a tall white, rumors were already whispering through military corridors. As early as the 1950s, during the height of the Cold War, stories began to circulate. The US government wasn't just observing UFO, they were meeting with the pilots. Hall's claims only added fuel to this fire. He said there was an arrangement. The tall whites would provide technological advancements, and in return, the US would offer secrecy and maybe even resources. Sound like science fiction? Consider this. From the mid-20th century onward, human technology exploded. Microchips, fiber optics, stealth aircraft. These weren't minor upgrades. They were leaps, jumps forward that seemed almost unearned. UFO theorists argue that these breakthroughs arrived far too fast to be natural. They ask, did the tall whites share knowledge with select government scientists in exchange for staying hidden? And if so, where did these exchanges happen? Enter one of the most infamous names in UFO history, Area 51. Located in the Nevada desert, not far from where Hall was stationed, Area 51 has long been linked to secret aircraft testing and alien research. Officially, the US government denied its existence for decades. Unofficially, it was the perfect cover. Hall claims he wasn't just near Area 51. He was part of the perimeter, his weather shack, his patrols. They weren't randomly assigned. In his words, he was placed in just the right spot to observe and report. Whether intentional or not, Hall believed he became a bridge between humans and tall whites, and he wasn't alone. Another whistleblower, Colonel Philip J. Corso, tells a strikingly similar story. In his book, The Day After Roswell, Corso claims he recovered alien tech from the 1947 crash site in Roswell, New Mexico. He said he helped reverse engineer that technology, embedding it quietly into U.S. defense contracts. Fiber optics, night vision, microprocessors. Corso believed these weren't just military innovations, they were alien legacies slipped into our world under government supervision. Of course, skeptics argue there's no hard proof, but with the government's refusal to declassify Area 51's research, the fire still burns. So here's the question: if this agreement truly exists, what else has been exchanged? What price has been paid? And most chilling of all, what if the tall whites never left?